ਮੀਡੀਆ ਵੇਸ ਦੇ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਤੋਂ ਜੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਸ ਅਣਸੁਖਾਵੀ ਅਣਕਿਆਸੀ ਘਟਨਾ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਰਪਿਤ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੂਰੇ 38 ਵਰ੍ਹੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵਾਪਰੀ ਸੀ। 에ਅਰ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਫਲਾਈਟ 182 ਅਸਮਾਨ ਤੋਂ ਸਿੱਧੀ ਸਮੁੰਦਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗਰਕ ਹੋ ਗਈ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਮਾਮ ਸਵਾਰ ਜੋ ਸਨ ਉਹ ਮੌਤ ਦੇ ਮੂੰਹ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਲੇ ਗਏ। ਅੱਜ 38 ਸਾਲ ਬੀਤ ਗਏ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਰੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਉਹ ਮ੍ਰਿਤਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਬੇਕਸੂਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਇਸ ਹਾਦਸੇ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿਕਾਰ ਹੋਏ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਯਾਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਮਨਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਇਸੇ ਹੀ ਮੌਕੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ BC ਦੇ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਨੇ ਬਿਆਨ ਜਾਰੀ ਕੀਤਾ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਿਆਨ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਹਾਂ। ਦਹਿਸ਼ਤਗਰਦੀ ਦੇ ਪੀੜਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਯਾਦਗਾਰੀ ਦਿਵਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਦਾ ਬਿਆਨ ਵਿਕਟੋਰੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਜੀ, ਰਾਜਧਾਨੀ ਤੋਂ। ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਡੇਵਿਡ ਐਬੀ ਨੇ ਦਹਿਸ਼ਤਗਰਦੀ ਦੇ ਪੀੜਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਯਾਦਗਾਰੀ ਦਿਵਸ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਡੇ ਆਫ ਰਿਮੈਂਬਰੈਂਸ ਫਾਰ ਵਿਕਟਮਸ ਆਫ ਟੈਰਰਿਜ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਮੌਕੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਹ ਬਿਆਨ ਜਾਰੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਸੰਜੀਦਾ ਦਿਨ 'ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਸ਼ ਤੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨਸ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੋ ਦਹਿਸ਼ਤਗਰਦੀ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿਕਾਰ ਹੋਏ ਹਨ। ਅੱਜ ਤੋਂ 38 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 에ਅਰ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਫਲਾਈਟ 182 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵਾਰ 329 ਯਾਤਰੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਕਰੂ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਹੱਤਿਆ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ। ਪੀੜਤਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ 280 ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਸਨ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਕਾਇਰਤਾਪੂਰਨ ਵਾਰਦਾਤ ਨੇ ਅਣਗਿਣਤ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਕ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਦੋਸਤਾਂ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਦਾ ਲਈ ਬਦਲ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ। ਦਹਿਸ਼ਤਗਰਦੀ ਦਾ ਸਦਮਾ ਘਟਨਾਵਾਂ ਵਾਪਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਲੰਮੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੱਕ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਯਾਦਗਾਰੀ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਦਿਨ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੀ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਮਾਨਵਤਾ ਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਵਾਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਪਲ ਰੁਕਣ ਤੇ ਹਿੰਸਾ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਗੁਆਚੀਆਂ ਜਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦੁਖਾਂਤ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਮੌਕਾ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦਹਿਸ਼ਤਗਰਦੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਘਟਨਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਨਿੰਦਾ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਇਕਜੁੱਟ ਹੋਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਉਦੇਸ਼ ਡਰ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਅਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੰਡ ਪਾਉਣਾ ਹੈ। ਇਕੱਠਿਆਂ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਵਿਭਿੰਨਤਾ, ਨਿਰਪੱਖਤਾ ਅਤੇ ਆਦਰ ਦੀਆਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਸਾਂਝਾਂ ਕਦਰਾਂ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਸਮਾਜ ਦਾ ਨਿਰਮਾਣ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਆ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਡੂੰਘੀ ਹਮਦਰਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਗਟ ਕਰਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਦਹਿਸ਼ਤਗਰਦੀ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਦੁੱਖ ਤੇ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਝੱਲਿਆ ਹੈ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸੋਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਬਿਹਤਰ, ਵਧੇਰੇ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤ ਥਾਂ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਜਾਰੀ ਰੱਖਣ ਦਾ ਵਚਨ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇੱਕ ਅਜਿਹੀ ਥਾਂ ਜੋ ਡਰ ਤੋਂ ਮੁਕਤ ਹੋਵੇ। ਔਰ ਇਹ ਜੀ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਦੇ ਦਫ਼ਤਰ ਤੋਂ ਜਾਰੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਬਿਆਨ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਜਿਮੀ ਸਮਿਥ, ਡਿਪਟੀ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਦੇ ਦਫ਼ਤਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ jimmy.smith@gov.bc.ca ਤੇ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੂਬੇ ਦੇ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਦਿਨ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਹ ਬਿਆਨ ਜੋ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਜੀ ਆਸ਼ਨਾ ਜੀ
ਹਾਂ ਦੀਦੀ, ਅੱਜ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਡੇ ऑफ रिमेम्बरेंस है फॉर द विक्टिम्स ऑफ टेररिज्म और आप सभी के लिए 38 ईयर्स आज भी भूला नहीं जाता। एयर इंडिया फ्लाइट 182 और इसके बारे में एक फ्लैशबैक देते हैं दीदी। एयर इंडिया फ्लाइट 182 was an Air India flight operating from the Montreal, London, Delhi, Bombay route. On 23rd June of 1985, it was operated using Boeing 747-237B registered VTEFO It disintegrated in mid-air en route from Montreal to London at an altitude of 31,000 feet, 9,400 meters over the Atlantic Ocean as a result of an explosion from a bomb planted by Canadian Sikh terrorists. The remnants of the airline fell into the ocean approximately 190 kilometers, 120 miles off the coast of Ireland, killing all 329 people aboard, including 268 Canadian citizens, 27 British citizens, and 24 Indian citizens. The bombing of Air India Flight 182 is the deadliest aviation incident in the history of Air India and was the world's deadliest act of aviation terrorism until the September 11 attacks in 2001. Investigations found the attack was a part of a larger transnational terrorist plot and had included 2 attempted plane bombings. The first bomb was meant to explode aboard Air India Flight 301, which was scheduled to take off from Narita International Airport, Japan, but it exploded before it was loaded onto the plane. This bomb detonated early, killing 2 baggage handlers because perpetrators failed to take into account that Japan does not observe daylight savings time. The second bomb planted aboard Air India Flight 182 in Canada was successful. It was eventually that both the plot and the bombs, which had been hidden inside luggage, had originated in Canada. The plan's execution had transnational consequences and involved citizens and governments from the 5 nation states. The Babbar Khalsa separatist group was implicated in the bombings. Although a handful of members were arrested and tried for the Air India bombing, the only person convicted was Inderjeet Singh Riat, a dual British-Canadian national and a member of the International Sikh Youth Federation, who pleaded guilty in 2003 to manslaughter. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for assembling the bombs that exploded on board Air India Flight 182 and at Narita. The subsequent investigation and prosecution lasted almost 20 years. This was the most expensive trial in Canadian history, costing nearly 130 million Canadian dollars. The Governor General in Council in 2006 appointed the former Supreme Court Justice John C. Major to conduct a commission of inquiry. His report, which was completed and released on 17th June of 2010, concluded that a cascading series of errors by the Government of Canada, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the Canadian Security and Intelligence Services had allowed the terrorist attack to take place. कुछ background है दीदी?
जी.
Or during the 1970s, many Sikhs emigrated to Western Canada for better economic opportunities. These included men who later became leaders and members of the Babbar Khalsa, including Talwinder Singh Parmar, Ajaib Singh Bagri, Ripudaman Singh Malek, and Inderjeet Singh Riat. By the 1980s, the area around Vancouver, British Columbia, had become the largest center of Sikh population outside India. In India, on 13th April 1978, a convention organized by the Sant Nirankari Mission took place at the time of the important Sikh festival of Vaisakhi, a celebration of the birth of Khalsa. The convention was led by Gurbachan Singh, leader of the Sant Nirankari Mission, and was organized in Amritsar with permission from the Akali Dal state government. The practices of Sant Nirankari were considered heresy by the school of Orthodox Sikhism expounded by Bhindranwale. A procession of about 200 Sikhs जी हाँ दोस्तों, आप सुन रहे www.mwlive.ca और आज जो हम बातचीत कर रहे हैं वो है इंटरनेशनल National Day of Remembrance for the Victims of Terrorism Air India Flight 182. और जिस तरह से हम कुछ बैकग्राउंड्स दे रहे थे, in India on April 13, 1978, a convention organized by Sant Nirankari Mission took place at the time of the important Sikh festival of Vaisakhi, a celebration of birth of Khalsa. The convention was led by Gurbachan Singh, leader of the Sant Nirankari Mission, and was organized in Amritsar with permission from the Akali Dal state government. The practices of the Sant Nirankari were considered heresy by the school of Orthodox Sikhism expounded by Bhindranwale. A procession of about 200 Sikhs led by Bhindranwale and Fauja Singh of the Akhand Kirtani Jatha left the Golden Temple heading towards the Nirankari convention. In the ensuing violence, several people were killed. Two of Bhindranwale's followers, 11 members of the Akhand Kirtan Jatha and 3 Nirankaris. A criminal case was filed against 62 Nirankaris who were charged by the Akali-led government in Punjab with the murder of 13 Sikhs. The case was heard in the neighboring Haryana state, and all accused were acquitted on the basis that they acted in self-defense. The Punjab government decided not to appeal the decision. As a result of the Nirankaris receiving positive attention in the media, some Orthodox Sikhs claim this is to be a conspiracy to defame the Sikh religion. Bhindranwale increased his rhetoric against the perceived enemies of Sikhs. A letter of authority was issued by Akal Takht to ostracize the Sant Nirankaris and created an environment where some of the followers felt justified to kill the perceived enemies of Sikhism. The chief proponents of this attitude were the Babbar Khalsa, founded by the widow Bibi Amarjit Kaur of the Akhand Kirtani Jatha. The Damdami Taksal, led by Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, who had also been in Amritsar on the day of the attack on the convention. The Dal Khalsa formed with the object of demanding sovereign Sikh state and the All India Sikh Students Federation, which was banned by the government. The founders of this Panthan group in Vancouver vowed to avenge the deaths of Sikhs. Talvinder Singh Parmar led the militant wing of AKJ, which became the Babbar Khalsa, to attack the Nirankaris on 24th April 1980. Gurbachan Singh, the Baba head of Nirankaris, was killed. A member of the Akhand Kirtani Jatha, Ranjit Singh, surrendered and admitted to the assassination 3 years later and was sentenced to serve 13 years at the Tihar jail in Delhi. On 19th November 1981, Parmar was among the alleged terrorists who escaped from a shootout in which 2 Punjab police officers were gunned down outside the house of Amarjit Singh Nihang in Ludhiana district. This added to the notoriety of Babbar Khalsa and its leader. He went to Canada. In 1982, India issued a warrant for Parmar's arrest for 6 charges of murder. Stemming from the killing of the police officers, India notified Canada that Parmar was a wanted terrorist in 1981 and asked for his extradition in 1982. Canada denied the request in July of 1982. After an Interpol alert, Parmar was arrested while attempting to enter West Germany. West Germany chose to handle the case locally rather than transfer him over to India. Parmar went on a hunger strike to win his religious rights to wear a turban and have vegetarian meals in the Dusseldorf jail. After India received information that Parmar had made assassination threats against Indira Gandhi, they found that Germany had decided that the evidence was weak. In 1983, rebels led by Damdami Taksal Jathedar leader Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala occupied Akal Takht of Golden Temple and amassed weapons in the Sikh temple. They passed the Anandpur Sahib resolution, which demanded that the state be given more powers from the central government and greater autonomy by the changes to Indian constitution. The total number of deaths was 410 in violent incidents and riots, while 1,180 people were injured. The central government rejected the secessionist demands, and on 3rd to 6 June 1984, Prime Minister of India Indira Gandhi ordered Operation Blue Star to remove the militants from Golden Temple. Sikhs protested against the operation worldwide. On 31st October 1984, Indira Gandhi was assassinated by two of her Sikh bodyguards. In retaliation, the 1984 anti-Sikh riots, guided by certain Indian National Congress members, killed thousands of Sikhs in India. With the preparation, Didi Parmar visited Inderjeet Singh Riyad, an auto mechanic and electrician who lived in Duncan, British Columbia, a small community north of Victoria on Vancouver Island. He asked him to construct a bomb. Riyad later claimed he had no idea for what it would be used. Riyad asked various people in the community about dynamite, saying he wanted to remove free stumps on his property. Riyad also discussed explosives with co-worker while expressing anger at the Indian government and Indira Gandhi in particular. Later that year, Ajaib Singh Bagri accompanied Parmar as his right-hand man in the militancy against the Indian government. Bagri worked as a forklift driver at a sawmill near the town of Kamloops. He was known as a powerful preacher in the Indo-Canadian community. The pair traveled across Canada to incite Sikhs against the Indian government for conducting Operation Blue Star. They used the meetings as fundraisers for Babbar Khalsa. A former head priest in Hamilton testified that Bagri said, "The Indian government is our enemy, the same way the Hindu society is our enemy." Bagri told a congregation, "Get your weapons ready so we can take revenge against the Indian government." Bagri's speech on July 1984, the founding convention of the World Sikh Organization, was held at Madison Square Garden in New York City. The WSO's constitution was committed to diplomacy and non-violence, and it said the organization would strive for an independent Sikh homeland by peaceful means. Although Parmar was blocked at the border, he had been put under 24-hour watch. Bagri gave an hour-long speech at the convention. He said, "Until we kill 50,000 Hindus, we will not rest," before a crowd of 4,000 people. This statement was quoted against him at his later trial. Bagri defended hijackers who had forced the hated Indian government into negotiations with the Sikh leadership and was critical of Gandhian non-violence. "We are to die in the battlefield fighting, sacrificing ourselves. To die such a death, which is the mission of the Khalsa, is our religion." Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front members and Afghan Mujahideen were also invited to the rally. An Afghan Mujahid said, "We will bring together all movements against India because India allies itself with Soviet Union." At the time, Soviet-Afghan war was underway, and many foreign Mujahideen had gone to Afghanistan to help the Muslims. A professional translator testified later as a witness that Bagri's speech in Punjabi had been distorted by observers who failed to understand its context within Sikh history and literature. He denied that Bagri had urged Sikhs to take revenge against all Hindus. He considered that Bagri was trying to inflame passions and arouse national pride. Now comes the plot preparation.
जी
In late 1984, at least 2 informers reported to authorities on the first abortive plot to bomb Air India Flight 182, which then flew out of the Montreal's Mirabel International Airport. In August 1984, the known criminal Gary Baudrot claimed that Talvinder Parmar showed him a suitcase stuffed with $200,000 payment if he would plant a bomb on a plane. He decided, I had done some bad things in my time, done my time in jail, but putting a bomb on a plane, not me. I went to the police. In September, in an attempt to get his sentence for theft and fraud reduced, Harmail Singh Grewal of Vancouver told the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police of the plot to bomb the flight from Montreal. Both reports were dismissed as unreliable. The moderate Sikh Ujjal Dosanjh had spoken out against violence by Sikh extremists. He was attacked in February of 1985 by an assailant welding an iron bar. His skull was broken and he required 80 stitches in his head. On 5th March 1985, 3 months after the bombing, the CSIS obtained a court order to place Parmar under surveillance for 1 year. Although the Babbar Khalsa had not yet been officially banned, the affidavit for surveillance stated it is a Sikh terrorist group now established in Canada. It has claimed responsibility for more than 40 assassinations of moderate Sikhs and other persons in the Punjab and pinned its name to threatening letters addressed to high officials in India. The affidavit said that on 15th of July 1984, Parmar urged the Coach Temple congregation of Calgary, Alberta to unite, fight and kill to avenge the attack on the Golden Temple. In April of 1985, a Canadian familiar with blasting was asked by Riyadh how much dynamite it would take to blow up a tree slum. Riyadh asked numerous people in Duncan about explosives and expressed the need for revenge. Riyadh sold cases of dynamite and appeared willing to pay 3 times the normal price. He eventually confined to one acquittance that it was not about stumps but trouble in the old country, that he needed explosives to help my countryman. One friend declined to get him dynamite but did lend him a 400-page manual on mining with explosives. On May 8th of 1985, Riyadh bought a Micronta digital automobile clock at the Radio Shack store in Duncan, designed for a 12-volt automobile electrical system. It could also be powered by a 12-volt lantern battery. The 24-hour alarm activated a buzzer. Riyadh returned to the store a week later to buy an electrical relay. After asking how to get the buzzer signal to power another device, wiretappers recorded 9 telephone calls in a month between Riyadh and Parmar's residence in Vancouver. Riyadh called either for his residence or workplace on Vancouver Island. As a result of this activity, the government added Riyadh to the list of persons being monitored for terrorist activities. The Canadian government would later accuse Riyadh of lying in 2023, when at first he said he did not know for what the 3 clocks he had bought could be used. He later said Parmar needed an explosive device to blow up a bridge of something large in India and that he needed timers for an explosive device. The relay could be used to trigger the detonator circuit for a blasting camp, which would provide the initial shock needed to detonate larger explosives such as dynamite. Riyadh later visited a television repair shop seeking help for partly disassembled car clock wired to a lantern battery. He claimed that he needed to help so that the buzzer stayed on rather than intermittently beeping, so that it would turn on a light in his camper to wake him up. The repairman knew his friend did not own a camper. Justice J. Raymond Perry said Riyadh's 1991 trial that this was an odd use of a timer. By mid-May, Riyadh had gone into the woods to test a device with a 12-volt battery, cardboard cylinder, gunpowder, and some dynamite. but the device failed to work. The wooded area was in proximity to Duncan and Paldi. Later, Riyadh acquired between 6 and 8 sticks of dynamite to blow up unidentified stumps if need be in the future from a Duncan well driller after visiting his house to fix a truck. He also obtained a few blasting caps day later. On 31st May of 1985, Riyadh brought his timer attached to a bomb box into his shop so that his fellow employees at Duncan Auto Marine Electric could help him fix it for a friend, but he returned the radio after it did not work properly. On June 4th, CSIS agents Larry Lowe and Lynn McAdams followed Parmar and a youthful man identified only as Mr. X, third man or unknown male, as they went from Parmar's house to the Horseshoe Bay ferry terminal, rode the Nanaimo-bound ferry and visited Riyadh at his home and shop at Auto Marine Electric. The three drove to a deserted bush area where Riyadh was observed taking an object into the woods, staying out of sight. The agents, who did not bring a camera, only had a bang which sounded like a loud gunshot. Later tests showed it could only have been explosion, and later searches turned up remains of an aluminum electrical blasting cap. J.S. Warren, Director General of the Counter-Terrorism at CSIS, would later ask on July 6 of 1986 why they did not ask the police to stop and question the suspects or search the vehicle which might have deterred the bombing plot. The next day, Riyadh purchased a large Sanyo component tuner model FMT 611K at Woolworths and left his name and telephone number on the charge slip, which was later found in a search of his home. Riyadh also bought smokeless gunpowder from a sporting goods store, signing I Riyadh on the explosive log. Study of debris from the Narita explosion would eventually show the bomb had been housed inside a Sanyo tuner with a serial number matching a model sold only in British Columbia, and used a Micronta clock as a timer, which powered a relay with the everyday 12-volt battery to trigger blasting caps to set off a high explosive consistent with sticks and of dynamite, all matching items purchased by Riyadh. This would lead to his eventual conviction. As late as 2010, Riyadh admitted only to buying and assembling some parts but denied he ever made a bomb, knew what the bomb was to be used for, who was behind any plot, or that he ever asked or knew the name of the man who he said stayed in his house for a week completing construction of the explosive device after his device failed. On June 9th of 1985, a police informer in Hamilton reported that Parmar and Bagri had visited the Melton Sikh temple, warning the faithful that it would be useful to fly Air India. Warning the faithful that it would be unsafe to fly Air India. Vancouver police also monitored militants 11 days before the bombing. A leader of the International Sikh Youth Federation complained that no Indian consuls or ambassadors had yet been killed, but the response was, "You will see, something will be done in 2 weeks." The suspects in the bombing used payphones and talked in codes. Translators' notes of wiretapped conversations include the following exchange between Talwinder Parmar and a follower named Hardyal Singh Johal on 20th June of 1985, the day tickets were purchased. Parmar said, "Did you write the story?" Johal said, "No, I didn't." Parmar said, "Do that work first." This conversation appears to be an order from Parmar to book the airline tickets. It is believed that writing the story referred to purchasing the tickets. Afterward, Johal phoned Parmar back and asked if he could come over and read the story he asked for, to which Parmar agreed. Moments after the wiretapped conversation at 1:00 UTC, a man calling himself Mr. Singh made reservations for 2 flights on 22nd June, one for Jaswant Singh to fly from Vancouver to Toronto on Canadian Pacific Airlines CP Flight 086, and one for Mohinder Pal Singh to fly from Vancouver to Tokyo on Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 003 and connect to Air India Flight 301 to Bangkok. At 2:20 On the same day, another call changed the reservations in the name of Jaswant Singh from CP086 to CP060, also flying from Vancouver to Toronto. The caller further requested to be put on the waiting list for AI181 from Toronto, Montreal, and AI182 from Montreal to Bombay. The next day at 19:10, a man wearing turban paid for the two tickets with $3,005 in cash at the CP ticket office in Vancouver. The names on the reservations were changed. Jaswant Singh became Mr. Singh and Mohinder Pal Singh became L. Singh. The reservation and purchases of these tickets together would be used as evidence to link the two flights to one plot. One telephone number left at a contact was Vancouver's Rose Street Sikh Temple. The other number became one of the first leads tracked by the investigations and was traced to Hardyal Singh Johal, a janitor at a Vancouver high school. Johal was an avid follower of Talwinder Singh Parmar and thus closely scrutinized in the investigation following Air India bombing. He was alleged to have stored the suitcase explosives in the basement of Vancouver school and to have purchased the tickets for the flights on which the bombs were placed. Mandeep Singh Grewal recounted how he saw and recognized Johal as his school janitor when he said goodbye to his father, one of the Flight 182 victims at the airport on the day of the bombing. Riyadh went to work on 21st June. Phone records show he called Johal at 7:17 p.m. A witness whose name was protected testified that Bagri asked to borrow her car the night before the bombing to take some suitcase to the airport, though he would not be flying with them. On June 22nd, 1985 at 6:30 a.m., a man calling himself Manjeet Singh checked in as Mr. Singh, called to confirm his reservations on Air India Flight 182. He was told he was still waitlisted and was offered alternative arrangements, which he declined. At 8:50 a.m., Mr. Singh checked into a busy line of 30 people for the CP flight from Vancouver to Toronto, which was scheduled to leave at 9:18 a.m. He asked agent Jenny Adams to check his dark brown, hard-sided Samsonite suitcase and have it transferred to Air India Flight 181 and then to Flight 182 to India. The agent initially refused his request to interline the baggage since his seat from Toronto to Montreal and from Montreal to Bombay was unconfirmed. He insisted, but the agent again rebuffed him, telling him, "Your ticket doesn't read that you are confirmed and we are not supposed to check your baggage though." The man said, "Wait, I'll get my brother for you." As he started to walk away, she relented and agreed to accept the bag, but told him he would have to check in again with Air India in Toronto. After the mass murders, Adams would realize his deception got the bag on its way to Flight 182. The anxious man was never identified. At 9:18 a.m., Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 60 to Toronto Pearson International Airport departed without Singh. Riyadh would later testify that he traveled by ferry from Duncan to Vancouver that morning to work on his brother's truck. Phone records show someone called from his residence in Duncan to Johal's number at 10:50 a.m. and 4 p.m. later that day. Riyadh was seen in company of another East Indian man at the Auto Marine Electric store in Burnaby near Parmar's house between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. He bought two 12-volt batteries similar to the one used in the explosive device tested in the woods, and they were to fit into a special metal bracket he had brought with him. Constable Clark Marlowe later believed there was ample time for Inderjeet Singh Riyadh to obtain the batteries at the Auto Marine Electric Limited store in Burnaby, incorporate with the batteries in the assembly of an explosive device, and then have the device transported in a suitcase to the Vancouver airport. At 2022, Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 60 arrived in Toronto 12 minutes late. Some of the passengers and baggage, including the bag M. Singh had checked in, were transferred to Air India Flight 182. In response to threats from Sikh activists, Air India had requested extra security, leading Canada to assign extra policemen in terminals in Toronto and Montreal, and all baggage was to be checked by X-ray or by hand. But after the X-ray machine broke down that day, inspectors used a portable PDD-4 explosive sniffer. An Air India security officer had demonstrated that it made loud scream when a lit match was held at inch away, and showed that it should be used around the edge of the bag being tested. Before 5:15 and 6 o'clock, the sniffer was heard to beep at a soft-sided maroon suitcase with a zipper going all around. It beeped in a low volume near the zipper lock, but Air India was not informed, since checkers were not instructed on how to react to only a short beep, so they allowed the bag to pass on its way. Later investigation would determine that the containers that could have contained Mr. Singh's bag were placed close to the sensitive electronic bay at the aircraft. 8:15 p.m. June 23rd. Air India Flight 181, a Boeing 747-237B named Emperor Kaniska, departed Toronto Pearson International Airport for Montreal International Airport. The aircraft was an hour and 40 minutes late because of fifth port. A spare engine was installed under the aircraft below the left wing to be flown to India for repairs. Some of the parts had to be stored in the rear cargo compartment. The fifth port engine was serviceable spare engine that had to be been on lease to Air Canada after one of the Boeing 747s suffered an engine failure on the way to India. That engine received a post-lease inspection and was declared serviceable by the Air Canada personnel. The plane arrived in Montreal International Airport at 1 o'clock, 9 p.m. 22nd June. There it had become the Flight 182. Flight 182 departed for London Heathrow Airport en route to Palam International Airport, Delhi, and Sahar International Airport, Bombay. 329 people were on board, 307 passengers and 22 crew. Captain Hanse Singh Narendra served as the captain, with the captain Satwinder Singh Binder as the first officer and Dara Dumasia as the flight engineer. Many of the passengers were going to visit family and friends. 8:09 Irish time, the crew of the Boeing 747 squawked 2005 a routine activation of its aviation transponder as requested by Shannon Airport Air Traffic Control, then vanished from the radar screens. At exactly the same time, a bomb hidden in a Senio tuner in a suitcase in the Ford cargo hold exploded while the plane was at 31,000 feet, 9,400 meters at 51%. It caused explosive decompression and the break of the aircraft in mid-air. The wreckage settled in 6,700 feet deep water of the southwest Irish coast, 120 miles offshore of County Cork. No Mayday call was received by Shannon ATC. ATC asked aircraft in the area to try to contact Air India, to no available. GMT ATC had declared an emergency and requested nearby cargo ships and the Irish Naval Service vessel to look for the aircraft. Meanwhile, sometime before 1:22 p.m., Elsing checked in for 1:37 p.m. CP Air Flight 003 to Tokyo with one piece of luggage, which was to be transferred to Air India Flight 301 to Bangkok. However, Elsing did not board the flight. The second bag checked in by Elsing went on Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 003 from Vancouver to Tokyo. There were no X-ray inspections of luggage on this flight. Its target was Air India Flight 301. due to leave with 177 passengers and crew bound for Bangkok Don Muang, but 55 minutes before the flight 182 bombing, it exploded at the terminal in Narita International Airport. 2 Japanese baggage handlers were killed and 4 other people were injured. It appears the conspiration meant for both bombings to occur, but they neglected to take into account that Japan does not observe daylight savings time as Canada does.
ਅੱਛਾ ਨਾ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਇਸ ਭਿਆਨਕ ਹਾਦਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਭਿਆਨਕ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਭੁੱਲਣ ਦੀਆਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ਾਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਜਾਣ, ਪਰ ਕਦੇ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲ